Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to pass a microphone for whoever wants to start. Michael, would you like to start? Okay, great.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael, and I'm from Taiwan. So I'm starting off with the first question about the inspirations that we got from this first day conference. So an inspiration that I got was actually from Mr. Little's story about his grandfather, about how his grandfather and his little brother had a company, but his little brother essentially lost the company that they built up together, and that his grandpa couldn't really forgive him for that. And his grandpa sort of held on to that anger and resentment towards his brother for 30 or more years until he eventually passed away, still holding that negative emotions and feelings towards his own brother. And that to me sort of struck me to feel like maybe it was because it was probably because he wasn't able to come to terms with his negative emotions, and that maybe the willingness to forgive someone is actually the willingness to try to confront your own negative emotions, the willingness to actually confront your resentment towards other people, your negative feelings. Yeah, and we also got an inspiration from one of the speeches that wounded people make people wounded. So whenever you get wounded because of another person, you might want to try to switch your perspective a little bit, maybe, and think in his boots, maybe that he was wounded once before as well. And then we learned that forgiveness is a choice, but a very lengthy progress that everybody has to go through in order to achieve this very difficult aftermath. Yeah, and the thing that we felt was kind of missing, or sort of we needed a bit of more elaboration, was we didn't know how exactly to come to terms with the fact that what you're doing right now is not working, and that you would have to resort to forgiveness. So Dr. Embright was talking about that there's a couple of steps you need to take before, in order to forgive someone, right? And it sort of had to jump, because one second we were still reflecting on how people were treating us when we were deeply hurt, and how we could treat other people when they were deeply hurt. But then the other second it sort of jumped, and we're now talking about, okay, so now you have to sort of just comes into terms that whatever resentment and whatever anger that you hold towards this person is not going to get resolved because you hate him, and that you have to just forgive him. So we don't know how exactly to cope with that. We don't know so between this jump, what exactly happened? What is this progress that transitions us from, okay, I'm going to stop hating this person now, and I'm going to start to forgive him. How does this transition happen? We sort of, to us, it was a bit unclear. Yeah. And I was just wondering if there's any brain activity that goes on in particular when you forgive someone that makes this progress rewarding or anything like that. Is there a brain map that we can see or something like that? Yeah. And as for the third question, it's talking about how we can sort of spread this idea of forgiving someone, right? And we thought that maybe it can be spread during conflicts, that maybe you, as someone who has attended this conference, and you have a friend who is currently in a conflict with somebody, and he is in need of your assistance on this matter. And then maybe you can talk to him about what you have learned through this conference, and then sort of preach to him about how your friend can tackle this with a different perspective, and from an approach to forgive the other person of this conflicting matter. And yeah, and maybe another way would be storytelling, and this is more directed to children and younger education stuff. Yeah. And another thing we thought about is that maybe we can do it through workshops and have whatever is taught during this conference and whatever we have learned throughout this conference and sort of condense it into a workshop and bring it back to our own schools, our own communities, and have keynote speeches like Dr. Embright, such as Dr. Embright and Dr. Little and Mr. Little, what they have done throughout this conference, and have some hands-on practice for people that will be willing to attend our workshop. And as a final note, we drew a turtle because we felt like forgiveness is a very lengthy progress that takes a very long time. And a turtle is an animal that is known to walk very slowly. So we should know that during our progress, during this lengthy progress of forgiveness, we should behave or act like the turtle. Respect the turtle's pace in this matter. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who wants to share next? All right. Yeah, go ahead.
So hello everyone, my name is Nora. I'm a research assistant and representative of the Israeli team. Regarding the first question, what inspired you regarding what we heard today and what we saw in the videos? First of all, we all discussed and said that all of the teachers' presentations and they're talking about forgiveness was really amazing and really inspiring. It was really amazing to see how students comprehend and see forgiveness and how they simplify things that maybe sometimes we as adults don't simplify it as much. Another thing was the personal story of Dr. Little. We saw that the act of his grandparent, that he held a grudge towards his brother, really continued and to his mother and then to him himself, and how it affected him. And we can see how anger really affects a person and a person's health and a person's lifestyle. And then we can see how how his grandparents hurt and the feelings he felt. Sorry, I'm a bit excited. Yeah. How the things he felt really affected even his grandchild. So that was really inspiring to see how he chose to change that into something good. The third thing is how we saw that in each culture, in the 3 countries, they implemented the program, and all of the students in each country really benefited from this program. And we can see how, regardless from where you are, you can really, really connect to this program, and we all need it as humans, and how it sometimes can overcome stereotypes throughout the countries, and we're really waiting for the results. The final thing about the first question is Dr. Robert Enright mentioned that sometimes doing a good deed to the person who hurt us or treated us unjustly is a way to show agape love. And this sentence really stuck through all of our minds, and I think how it is really hard to do that, but it is a great deed to do. And I will continue to the next question. What's missing? We thought that we need to train the teachers more properly and for a longer period of time, and even we can train the whole staff for agape love and forgiveness education before implementing the program to the students. And we can try to implement it in all of the fields, maybe in science, in mathematics, and in languages, to guarantee a maximum educational experience and implementation to students for a maximum effect on the children. and that's something that was missing. Another thing is maybe we can try to build a community of educators who will all assist each other in this program, and not only in the same school, educators from the same school, but educators from maybe the several countries or the country itself in several places, and really build a community to teach forgiveness and agape love. And final question is how to spread the idea of agape love and forgiveness. First of all, to try and train all of the teachers at schools to implement it. The second thing is we really think that parents have a huge role in educating the children to forgiveness too, because the students go back home and they spend most of the time there. And if they learn something at school and then go back home and their parents tell them, no, you should have done that, you should have hit that child that hit you, or fought with that child that took your lunch, then we're not really making significant progress. So the change must start with the parents themselves. We should train them too to forgiveness and agape love. And the last thing is maybe to adjust the curriculum and the surveys to each culture and language according to the students' level and school characteristics. And I think that's really, really important. And thank you.
Thank you.
Tróna Maya Carja is Misha Fiona Banny Kearney o Ballytouchy o Ferrin Ernach May. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Fiona Kearney. I'm from Swatra in Ireland, and I don't really want to repeat the points that have already been made, so I'm going to try and pick up some of the different points that our groups made around our end of the hall. Can I borrow your questions? The inspirational bit we took away was that it gives us hope for the future. Hope that our children can be equipped with the skills that they need to forgive. Hope that our teachers can deliver the skills that they need. But one of the big things we took out of it wasn't just about the children, it was actually personally ourselves, that we have to look at how we forgive people. Is there anybody we need to forgive? Who was the last person that we forgave? Who's the next person we're going to forgive when we leave the conference? Hope you forgive me for what I'm doing. So we took out hope, personal inspiration. We thought even some of the little quotes in the bottom of the brochure were very good takeaways. And one of the very popular things for us was looking at the children's definitions of what forgiveness means, because children can teach us so much. What's missing? Our answers to question 2 and 3 sort of combined. We thought, yes, we can bring the program to children, but really, globally, this program needs to go to the adults who are making decisions for everybody, and not necessarily the right decisions. We need to bring it to community groups. We need to bring it to the different churches. We need to include and embrace all ethnicities. Somebody had passed remark that there are a very low rate of black Americans here. African Americans, I don't know the right term because I'm from Swatra. And I was going to say something else there, but and then somebody passed a remark: are they not here because African Americans are very angry? So then the next question is, well, why? Why are they angry? So there's a whole lot of discussions that we didn't get to around the table as well. One thing that struck me was, on all this forgiveness, there was no reference to my God, our God, your God, anybody's God. And we felt, some of us, that the forgiveness program is something that could dovetail into different religious and different ethoses, and even, secular schools can take learning from it as well. So I find that interesting. What can we do next? We can bring the information to the pastors, bring it to the different churches, continue to roll out to different schools, and initial teacher training, initial teacher education is very key, and thanks go to Stranmillis for doing that. On a personal note, I found some of the day, this is a challenging comment, okay, everybody? I found some of the day a little bit sanitized because we're talking to people from areas of conflict, but in many ways, the conflict wasn't touched, and how forgiveness could, but maybe one day is a bit too much to squeeze all that in. But up in the room, in the breakout room, there was a story delivered about how it impacted on people. I can't remember what group it was. The Israeli team, yes. So thank you. I thought that was very realistic. So thank you very much. I hope that's fairly representative of our neck of the woods. Okay, Gurmaagav.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marsha Baldridge, and I'm representing the Monona Room, and I have my cohort, Rosemary. She's going to jump in if I forget something. In answer to the first question, what inspires you regarding what you have heard today? And we looked at working out of a place of love. That was awesome. Education, starting at a young age, is so key because it doesn't get so deeply embedded within you that there's no hope. And it's global across all cultures, no economics, no color, it's universal. We love the teachers' zeal, their passion, their commitment, creativity. It was unified across all countries. You could see a thread running through all of it. The journaling, the artwork, the children grasping it, it was great. And warming your heart, I love that part, tying it to science curriculum. It's inclusive, both self-focused and others-focused. And it transfers to other areas in the children's lives, to their home life, to other subjects that they're studying. And I think that's awesome. Anything to add, Rosemary?
Sure. I'd like to add that we saw the value, the incredible value of all of the testimonies and all of the stories that came out from participants, from the students themselves, from the teachers, and that the testimonial of the impact of forgiveness or lack of forgiveness over generations is super valuable, and we have to appreciate the fact that, we make ourselves vulnerable when we share stories like that, but we need those stories to learn from one another, and it's very good, and just to be able to see that anyone can learn forgiveness at any age. So Mr. Little had to learn forgiveness at an older age than some of the kids that were in these schools. But it's very valuable that he was able to see the need for it and to want to break the cycle. So that's it. And then the contagiousness of agape love was another thing that kind of inspired us, that hope for the future, and that it's like the chicken pox, it's going to affect everybody if we let it.
But in a more positive way. The answer to question number 2, what is missing? A broader audience, more buy-in, promote and publicize it further so that people are aware that it's out here. Expand it to other grade levels, especially middle school and high schoolers. How do we reach people at different life stages? Say an old goat like me versus the young kid, and or different life histories. Importance of being honest with oneself. And did you have anything, Rosemary?
Yeah, I think that idea of the broader audience, it wasn't clear whether the internationalness of this conference was meant to be specifically sort of with this idea of conflict areas or potentially, you know, divisive groups in needs of working together or need of forgiveness education, or why there was no presence, I guess, of an educational experience from the standpoint of the American experience. Is there an American experience that's better than, worse than, different from all the rest? And that would be something I would like to hear about at some point. And then in terms of the schools that were sampled here, we didn't hear how those schools were found or selected or began to participate, or how difficult or easy it was to get these programs into those schools. All of that sort of backstory might have been interesting, because, I mean, it's got to be hard.
Okay, and finally, the last question. How can agape love and forgiveness get out to our communities? We need to practice them ourselves, be role models, sponsoring a conference within our own communities, talk to principals, and especially the parents. Educating the parents is so key. I think sometimes it should come from the bottom up. Address misconceptions about forgiveness, especially, like forgetting, reconciliation. People need to understand it's not about that. What they really need to understand what forgiveness is, and break it down into smaller pieces. Maybe a media campaign, TV, radio, etc. Let people know this is hard work. It's not going to happen overnight. Talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. How about a forgiveness support group? We got support groups for everything else. Maybe we should have a support group for that. And finally, on my side, to help people understand that forgiveness is universal, not just an American thing. It's important across all different cultures.
And we had said, too, to try to get it into the community by going through the parents in some cases, through the workplace in other cases, through the business community, through having these students go and give their stories or tell their experiences from having learned about forgiveness, that let them be the promoters of forgiveness education to the adult world. I mean, I think some of their, the choices of words and the way that they describe forgiveness can really be inspirational to a lot of people, and people would not have thought about forgiveness in that way. So use the children's stories and their testimonies as the promoters of forgiveness education.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have just a minute or so left. So I would love to hear quickly the thoughts from the last two people. So, sir, why don't you go ahead and quickly share from your room, and then you'll go next.
Okay, my name is Dan Green, and I'm representing 219. And yes, really appreciated our discussion. I'd like to say ditto, because many of the thoughts have already been suggested. The group really appreciated, was inspired by the passion of the teachers, the joy in the children, inspired by the stories of change, that seeing that agape love and forgiveness fits the real human experience, not a Band-Aid, but a true resolution to the real problems that occur cross-culturally, across any type of differentiation we might want to look at. We appreciated the storytelling and looking at conflicted communities, and are looking at how that might facilitate the conflict that we have in this in our communities here, and how we might be equipping this younger generation, the next generation, to have the high respect, high regard for each person and the importance of that. That's something that our group, many shared as well. Communicating in empirical language, communicating in the ancient wisdoms language, communicating with reference to philosophy, to anthropology, et cetera, well-grounded, moving away from personal opinion into areas where we can meet to have discussion and develop understanding. A great appreciation that it's love-based, where there's so much fear, so much attention to anger, fear, et cetera, seeking what is good. We love the phrase, and I just lost it. What's on the back of the t-shirt? Loving others is living well? Yes, we like that. But the love-based approach and forgiveness as a way of addressing, other than powering up anger, hatred, resentment, etc. Particularly applied, we had some discussion also about bullying, and that rather than a Band-Aid, which many of the programs that have gone through the educational systems over the last 20 years or so, but truly addressing how we deal with the real problems that we have in interpersonal relationships. As we looked at the second question, and one of the thoughts was looking at how higher ed can partner with the K-12 teachers and in education, more support for the ancient wisdom traditions, for understanding philosophical foundations, understanding the whys and the hows before we get to the skills and the techniques, and how important that is. We talked also about parents and how do we address those parents that are pushing back because they see it as weakness, and the message at home might be very different, that, you know, strike back harder than you were hit, whatever that might be. And how can we engage with the larger community? We were looking at some of those things. We asked ourselves, why are not more here? We all thought of, they should be here, they should be here. How do we bring this message to many of the other elements in our culture? We really appreciated the first-person storytelling of the forgiveness stories and found that powerful, and that is something that you know, we look to increase. It was mentioned a roster of who's here and what motivated them to be here, to kind of know each other a little more. Examples for curriculum for teens, the scales that are used for the dependent variables, wanting to know more about those. And then for number 3, we ended up talking about trauma-informed care and how forgiveness, agape love and forgiveness, interfaces with trauma-informed care, and the importance of bringing this into addressing the consequences of trauma that are so pronounced, and arousal reduction, those type of things. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
My name is Melinda Gross. I'm from California. I will be brief because I understand it's me, closing remarks, and dinner. So mostly I'm going to focus on number 2. It's not necessarily what was missing, but what we'd like to see more of. For example, we'd like to know what's the long-term implication or follow-up with the children who have gone through the program. would like to hear how are they doing when they're 12 and 15 and 18. I'm 30, but I guess that's really looking forward. The second thing, and someone else touched on it here as well, is racial justice. How do you go to an oppressed group and tell them to forgive when they are being oppressed and there's still a lot of anger and bitterness and hatred? So we'd like to hear more on the racial piece. Interpersonal relations. We have a number of individuals who came in our group. We had PhD students, a professor, a financial analyst. That was different for us. But for example, today in our culture, you can't have a family discussion or a community discussion without politics or frankly COVID getting into the mix. How do we handle these conversations on an interpersonal level? And then lastly, is this gender-based? And I only bring this up because looking around the room, what's the proportion of men versus women? Do more women come to conferences, or do more women care about forgiveness? And I don't mean to be rude, but I'm really curious about the people who actually attend conferences. And is it because of a culture of, for example, nurses and teachers being the one who are teaching this? That's the question we have. What inspired us? I would just say that my group is incredibly diverse, and that inspired me.
Thank you so much.